Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Jackson was never one to dramatize the little silences in a relationship. He always believed that phases came and went, and a mature couple knew how to get through each one. But this had been going on for too long. The conversations with Vanessa, which used to fill their days, now only covered practical things. Paying bills, some commitment for the week, what was missing from the pantry. When he tried to bring up something more personal, she responded with disinterest, like she just wanted to end the topic. There was no more that spark in her eyes, not even a spontaneous gesture of affection. Touch became formality. The goodnight kiss turned into a mechanical habit. And the "I love you," which still came once in a while, no longer carried the same weight. It seemed like they were following an old script, trying to keep up appearances while everything inside had already changed. For a while, he preferred to think the problem was exhaustion. Vanessa's job had been demanding, and she often said so herself. When she came home, all she wanted was to take a shower and be on her phone. Jackson respected her space, even though he felt like something was slipping through his fingers. There were days when he prepared dinner, lit candles, tried to recreate some special mood. Vanessa thanked him with a polite smile and ate in silence, looking at messages. Afterward, she said she was tired and went upstairs. It was as if everything they had lived was now packed in invisible boxes, stored on shelves that only she could access. And he stayed there in the living room, facing the remains of an intimacy that no longer seemed to matter. The real discomfort came when Vanessa started showing selective enthusiasm. For him, everything was a burden. For her friends, she had plenty of energy. When the group from her old high school organized a reunion party, she talked about it for days. She mentioned who would come, recalled old stories, showed old photos with a smile Jackson hadn't seen in a long time. She said she had already arranged to meet some friends early. When he asked if she wanted him to come along, she said she didn't need him, that he could go later if he wanted. Jackson hesitated but decided he would go. Even without knowing the exact reason, something inside him insisted he needed to be there. On the night of the event, Vanessa left first, saying she'd meet some friends earlier to chat. She wore a new dress she had bought a few days before, used a different perfume, and did her makeup more carefully than she had in recent times. Jackson complimented her, but she reacted neutrally. Said a nearly automatic "thank you" and left. 2 hours later, he decided to go too. He wanted to see her, try to catch the party vibe, maybe recover a bit of the lightness they had lost. When he arrived, he greeted some acquaintances, looked around, and found her sitting at a table in the back of the hall. She was with a man he didn't recognize immediately. Vanessa smiled when she saw him, waved discreetly, and he approached. He kissed her on the cheek, asked if she was having fun. She said yes and quickly added, "Jackson, this is Chase, a friend from high school. We studied together for years." Chase extended his hand, friendly. Jackson returned the gesture, but something about that exaggerated smile annoyed him. The kind of guy who imposes himself too much without needing to say much. The type that seems too familiar too soon. While trying to socialize, Jackson noticed that the two shared a conversation dynamic that excluded him. Muffled laughter, inside jokes, long glances. Vanessa seemed different near him. Lighter, more alive. It wasn't irrational jealousy, it was discomfort with how easily she forgot his presence there. Jackson tried to stay polite, but the feeling of being just a background character at that table grew stronger with every minute. He looked around, pretended to be interested in other things, but the unease hit hard. When he got a chance, he leaned in and said calmly, "Let's leave. It's getting late for me." Vanessa looked at him and smiled awkwardly. "Oh, I wanted to stay a little longer." "You can go if you want." Jackson didn't expect that. He felt the ground disappear under him for a moment. He didn't insist. He stood up, said goodbye with a brief wave, and left the hall. In his head, a whirlwind of questions. It wasn't anger. It was that suffocating feeling of realizing something had already ended, but no one had the courage to say it out loud. On the way back to his car, the silence was even heavier than the last few weeks at home. And although he tried to push away the anguish, something inside him already knew, that night would still bring a truth that would change everything. And what was coming next would be impossible to ignore. The drive home was quiet. He didn't turn on the radio or touch his phone. All he wanted was to get home. But even in that heavy silence, something told him he would have to deal with more than he imagined. And he was right. What came next would not only confirm his suspicions but completely change the course of everything. When Jackson was close to his house, his phone vibrated in his pocket. It was a message from Mark, an old friend from the class, one of those who always tries to be discreet but can't hide for long. The short warning came with an attached image. He opened it. The photo showed Vanessa in the passenger seat, leaning forward, kissing Chase inside a car, with partially open windows. The caption simply said, "Thought you needed to see this." And that was enough. There was no immediate reaction. Just internal silence. The confirmation of what his instinct had already screamed. Her absence by his side. The empty words about wanting to meet old classmates. The easy laugh with a stranger who, within minutes, acted more intimate than he had seen in months. Jackson turned off his phone screen and continued driving home. He arrived home shortly after. Locked the car, walked up the stairs, and opened the door with the key in hand. He left the phone on the counter, went to the kitchen, and got a glass of water. His head was still spinning. The image of the kiss, Vanessa's look at the table, the cold response when he suggested leaving. The sum of all that hit harder now that he was alone. He stood there for a few seconds, trying to breathe deeply. He thought about taking a shower, lying down, and trying to sleep. But before he could move, someone knocked on the door. He opened it. It was Brooke. She looked uneasy. She was wearing the same outfit from the party, holding her bag against her body. Jackson didn't understand immediately. He just asked directly, "Are you okay?" She hesitated for a second and said she needed to talk. He stepped back, made space, and she entered. They sat in the living room. The silence between them was thick. Jackson kept his gaze fixed on the floor, while Brooke watched him as if choosing her words very carefully. He broke the silence. "If it's about what happened at the party. I don't know if it's the right time." Brooke answered without beating around the bush. She said she knew about her cousin's affair for a long time. That she tried to talk, tried to warn, but didn't have the courage. She said Vanessa was always skillful with words, good at turning things around. But she saw it with her own eyes. More than once. Messages on the phone, disguised meetings, repeated excuses. She said she felt angry, ashamed, and mostly guilty for not telling earlier. Jackson didn't take his eyes off her. He grabbed his phone, opened the gallery, and showed the picture. She looked at it for a second and shook her head, as if to say, "I already knew." Jackson sat on the couch, without saying a word. Brooke slowly approached and sat down too. The silence between them was full. Not uncomfortable. It was as if both understood each other's pain, even without sharing that kind of intimacy before. She placed her hand over his. Jackson didn't pull away. It was there, in that gesture, that the anger began to make way for a different kind of connection. Brooke said she felt guilty for keeping it secret. He replied that he would have preferred to find out from her than in that way. Their eyes met. No act. No apologies. The tension turned into desire, not impulsively, but from accumulated need. From sorrow seeking some refuge. The two moved closer, and in silence, the mood between them took over. Nothing was said, no promises were made. But what happened that night was the turning point. A break with everything that remained of before. And the confirmation that from then on, nothing would ever be the same again. 3 hours after Jackson left the party, the front door opened. Vanessa came in quietly, calling for him, not knowing what she would find. She went straight upstairs. When she opened the door, she froze for a moment. The scene before her was like a punch to the gut. Jackson was sitting on the edge of the bed, silent. Brooke was lying next to him, wrapped in the sheets of what used to be the couple's bed. The impact was immediate. Vanessa lost control. She started screaming, ran to the bed, pushed Brooke forcefully, and tried to rip the sheets, as if that could erase what had already happened. Brooke got up startled, without reacting. Jackson remained motionless for a few seconds, watching everything calmly. There was no shock on his face, only deep fatigue, the kind of exhaustion that comes after days fighting against a truth that refused to be ignored. When Vanessa turned to him and started pouring out senseless accusations, he simply stood up, walked to the nightstand, picked up his phone, and opened the image. He held the screen toward her. It was the photo. The kiss between her and Chase in the car, still in the party parking lot. The anger taking over Vanessa's body dissolved in seconds. The scream that was about to come stuck in her throat. She froze. Her expression shifted from fury to disbelief. Her eyes searched for some form of defense, but found no shelter. She tried to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Jackson remained silent. His silence said everything. It was the confirmation that he knew, that there were no more masks. Vanessa backed away. She looked at the room as if it were a strange place. As if she had never belonged to it. Then she turned her back, went down the stairs in silence, came back up with a suitcase in her hands, and entered the old closet. Jackson heard the zipper, the hangers clinking, the doors opening hurriedly. He didn't move. He remained in the same place, while Brooke, in silence, put on her clothes and left the room discreetly. A little while later, Vanessa passed through the living room, crossed the front door, and left without saying a single word. She took the suitcase, took the silence, took everything that remained of that story. And there, in the middle of it all, Jackson finally felt that the weight crushing him had been lifted. Not because he had won, but because he was finally free. The divorce happened without resistance, as if both knew there was no sense in prolonging what was already dead. Vanessa didn't contest anything. She didn't ask for time, explanations, or forgiveness. Jackson also didn't seek to understand the reasons, nor went through messages looking for more proof. The photo spoke for itself. Her actions before that were enough. What he wanted now was distance, peace. It was a direct process, signed in silence, as if the story between them had crumbled completely, leaving no shards behind. In the days that followed, Jackson remained discreet. He left common groups, avoided family gatherings, prioritized work, and kept superficial conversations only with those who really needed it. Not because he was bitter, but because he needed this time without external voices to reorganize his life. Meanwhile, Brooke appeared a few times. First, for practical reasons, to pick up a piece of clothing she had left, return a book she had borrowed long ago, take care of the dog that was temporarily under his care. The visits became frequent, even without justifications. There was no guilt between them. There was a silent understanding growing, fed by everything they had experienced and endured. The two began to see each other more naturally. Without rush, without labels. They were just there. Present in each other's lives. While Jackson followed this new path with firmness, Vanessa tried desperately to rebuild what she had lost. She tried to turn Chase into a partner, lover, even a routine companion. She forced a connection that only existed while everything was hidden. When the adrenaline faded, reality came. And it was uncomfortable. Chase didn't adapt to a couple life. He had different habits, a selfish lifestyle, and Vanessa found herself in a relationship without direction. They argued over small things, couldn't agree on simple plans, and even the easy laughter became rare. It was as if she was trying to build a house with pieces that never really fit. Little by little, the relationship unraveled before her eyes. The arguments became more frequent. The dates, more spaced out. Vanessa started sleeping at her mother's house some days, saying she needed space. And she stayed. Within weeks, Chase stopped reaching out. And she stopped answering. The end happened without a fight, without a final conversation. It just ceased. What had once seemed like passion revealed itself as a mistake loaded with regret. Vanessa returned to live in the old house where she grew up. She replaced the double bed with a borrowed mattress and shared the wardrobe with her mother. The phone rang less and less. Her social media, once lively, became stagnant. She tried to hide her frustration with ready-made phrases, but her eyes couldn't disguise it. On the other side, Jackson and Brooke moved forward. They started dating openly without fear of what others might say. They went to dinners, spent weekends at her parents' beach house, attended family birthdays. People commented, of course. There would always be those who were bothered by the direction things had taken. But none of it affected the two of them. Those who knew the full story understood. Those who didn't, speculated. Jackson was at peace. With time, he and Brooke decided to move in together. The pace was natural. The coexistence was light. Decisions were shared. Her presence became essential without him realizing exactly when it happened. 9 months had passed since the divorce. In that time, Jackson and Brooke built a solid relationship, free from the constraints that had previously suffocated any attempt at happiness. What began with complicity turned into real love. A love that grew simply, without empty promises, just through presence, respect, and truth. That was when they decided to get married. Nothing grand. Just an intimate ceremony surrounded by the people who had been part of their rebuilding. Loyal friends, family members who supported them from the beginning, faces that cheered for the two of them, ready for a new chapter. Vanessa's name was never considered for the guest list. Not out of revenge, but for coherence. That chapter had already closed. It was an old story, and Jackson didn't feel the slightest need to revive any part of it. Her absence wasn't even mentioned. Everyone knew enough to understand the silence. When it was time for the speeches, Jackson took the microphone. He looked around, saw the emotional faces, and paused for a few seconds before speaking. His voice was steady but carried emotion. He said that in that moment, he understood the true meaning of the word rebirth. He spoke about the stumbles, the voids that had to be faced, but especially about what he had found with Brooke. And then he smiled, looked at her, and, in front of everyone, proudly announced that he would be a father. He said Brooke was pregnant and that he felt the most blessed and happy man in the world. The guests reacted with surprise, joy, and tears. Applause filled the place. Genuine smiles bloomed from every corner. It was impossible not to be moved. Meanwhile, Monica, the gossipy cousin who always knew everything before anyone else, was there. And as she always did, she called Vanessa during the applause still echoing in the background. She told her every detail. She said the wedding was beautiful, that Brooke looked radiant, and that Jackson seemed completely renewed. And, as if that weren't enough, she added, and she's pregnant. He announced it during the speech. He's going to be a dad. On the other end of the line, silence. Vanessa, who answered from her aunt's bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed that now served as her refuge, let the phone slip from her hands. She cried there, without strength to react. The tears weren't just from sadness. They were from loss. Regret. Everything she had abandoned, believing she was gaining something greater. But what remained was only a dark room, sharp memories, and the certainty that no one goes back in time. She didn't answer the call. She stayed there, in silence, hugging her own loneliness, trying to understand how everything collapsed so fast, and how Jackson had rebuilt himself so well. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.